And welcome to our second off-season edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. Thank you so much in this off-season for listening and supporting Spits and Suds on 105.3 The Fan. Got a good one for you today because, yes, the Dallas Stars are out, but the Texas Stars are still currently in the Western Conference Finals of the American Hockey League, and they are taking on Abbotsford, which is the minor league affiliate of the Vancouver Canucks. Unfortunately, Texas Stars down 2-0, and here to talk about that is our friend from 100 Degree Hockey, at 100 Degree Hockey, and just Google search 100 Degree Hockey and Stephen Meserve. It's a must follow on social media as well as reading the articles because to me, they do the best job covering our Texas Stars. How are you, my friend? Good to catch up with you.
I'm doing well. It's not the off season for everyone quite yet.
I know.
We are the best of 7 down here in the Western Conference Finals against a team that Texas has never played before. So new stuff all over the place. Really an interesting matchup. They lost the 2 in Abbotsford, but hey, they lost 2 away games, so nobody's lost a home game yet, so it's not a series quite yet.
You know, the focus, I'm sure they'll do it in the Stanley Cup, and we were just talking about this, is the distance between Florida and Edmonton, but those are private charters. The distance between Austin/Cedar Park and Abbotsford, Canada, is quite the distance as well.
Yeah, for those not familiar, Abbotsford is a suburb basically of Vancouver in British Columbia. So the team, at least last time they flew to Abbotsford, back when they played the Abbotsford Heat back in 2014, they would actually fly to Seattle and then bus across the border because it's cheaper that way. And again, remember, they're flying commercial with 35 or 40 bodies and 70 or 80 bags. So different level of travel here in the A, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, how do they check their bags? What do they do? Do they have like a deal with the airlines? That's kind of fascinating.
Is actually, I feel like you set me up for this one, Gavin.
I did.
There's actually an article that I wrote last month or 2 ago where I interviewed the equipment guys and talked about how they actually do all of the bags in the AHL, specifically thinking about how actually as of now, Southwest Airlines no longer allows you to check 2 bags for free. And how that changes the way that an American Hockey League team would pay for their bags, because there's so many things that you actually bring on a flight. Not only do you have, of course, your gear and you've got your carry-on and stuff, but would you believe that teams actually bring their own skate sharpeners on the plane? They bring, because you can't guarantee that the skate sharpener that you like is going to be on the other end. It's not been standardized across the league. So they bring skate sharpeners. There's, all the shower shoes go in a bag, and all of the stuff that you do for workouts, all of your, all the supplements that they need, and extra 4 bags, I think, of extra sticks, all the extra goalie equipment. You need random jerseys in case you have a call up in the middle of your road trip. It's incredible. They have about 35 guys usually traveling between the team and all of the support staff, but then there's about 70 to 80 bags that fly with those guys.
Wow.
So when they show up at the airport, they actually have a manifest that they give the people who are taking in their bags, and they say, they just kind of randomly assign things. It's like, okay, well, Matej Bluml might have, stick bag number 2, and Justin Ritzkovian has all the shower shoes and workout gear assigned to him. It's just completely random.
But it's not chartered.
But it's not chartered. So, it's all commercial.
All right, but there's no, if I'm down at Austin Airport, I'm not waiting for Curtis McKenzie to check in digitally and then I go next. Has to be a different way, right?
Well,
I'm just fascinated by that.
Yeah, you might run into the Texas Stars at the Austin airport. It is entirely possible. Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm hoping they've all got TSA pre-check and everything, right, so they're not waiting taking their shoes offline. But they are traveling commercial, and there's no special secret entrance for an American Hockey League player. Yeah. So they're going to be sitting there in the lounge just like the rest of us.
Okay, so Spits and Sudsies, you can get on me for this next silly question. But when I'm traveling, I will see teams and they're in their jumpsuits or, various, maybe they're wearing suit and ties or they're wearing jackets that signify where they're from. And part of it is to keep everyone together, and part of it's unity. What do the Texas Stars have to wear when they're traveling?
I actually don't know the answer to that
Okay, all
question, but it's
right.
definitely not the suits. They're probably just wearing whatever they want to wear, you
Okay.
know? They're professionals. Hopefully they don't get lost in the airport or anything like that. I think they'll be okay.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right. Stars down 2 games to none, unfortunately, and a little bit of a controversial situation where it appeared as though in game 2, Stars tied it up on Curtis McKenzie's goal, but it was overturned. What did you see there? And do you think it was a good call as far as a no goal?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where one of the things that you need to know about the American Hockey League is that there are limited opportunities for review overall. There's only one camera that is allowed to be used for reviews in goal scoring situations, and that is actually a camera that's mounted directly above the blue paint. And that's the one when the refs go to look at the iPad, that's the one they're looking at. They can't look at anything else. So that's one good piece to know. And part of the reason why that's the case is that the league actually has to standardize across 32 different rinks, and that's the only camera angle that they can guarantee is present in every single rink, which is just something to know about the way the AHL is set up. Um, Now, the problem is that the whistle was not blown in the moment. Curtis McKenzie appeared to have scored. He kind of jostled the puck loose and got it over the line with about 3 minutes left in the game. Would have scored to tie the game, probably send the game to overtime, which is where game one went. But they viewed it as being, that old phrase, which we haven't heard in a long time, intent to blow, right? He hadn't blown the whistle yet, but he's gonna blow the whistle, and so it was dead when he intended to blow the whistle, I suppose. But the puck still came loose and ended up in the net. Neil Graham, Texas Stars head coach, was pretty steamed about it. He said the quote was he had a tough time living with it, and the league needed to look at it, and the league needed to do better. But they got to deal with what they got, and unfortunately, they were unable to tie it up in those last 3 minutes after that, and they come home now down 2-0 with 3 games at home Monday, Wednesday, Friday here.
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Packed barn, I assume, sold out crowds?
Hoping for it. They had a good long time to sell this first game on Monday night here, and Wednesday night as well. They knew they were going to be the home team, or they were going to be home for these 3 games because the two teams in the Pacific Division were both ahead of them, so they were able to start selling as soon as they knew they were moving on to the next round. They've done really well on attendance. They've had over 6,000 in the barn average attendance through the regular season. They are, I'm hoping, they'll be packed house tonight. Kids are out of school. Lots of opportunities for you to come out and cheer for the Texas Stars this week.
That's great. And news from the Dallas Stars. They have loaned to Texas Alexander Petravic, who played so well for Dallas throughout the playoffs, and goalie Ben Cros. So I guess the question is Petravic, I'm assuming, will immediately be inserted. Cros, maybe not because of the play of Remy Poirier in net, right?
Yeah, so the nice thing is, Dallas had the opportunity to call up Cros. They did this last year with Dylan Wells, where he was a practice goalie, right? He was the guy who, so Jake Ottinger didn't have to take the shots, or Casey DeSmith didn't have to take the shots with the guys who were maybe doing an optional skate or something like that. You had your third guy, and so Ben Cros will come down and do a similar thing, I imagine, for Texas and be the third goalie, because Remy Poirier he had a bit of a rough game early on in the Milwaukee series, or sorry, in the third game in the Grand Rapids series. He let up 4 goals against and got pulled. Magnus Hellberg went in there, saved the game. I guess if we're doing baseball references, he had a save, I suppose. They won it in double overtime, and they went to Magnus in game one against Milwaukee. But then they went back to Remy, and he hasn't lost the net since. He's had been playing some really lights out stuff. The game the other night against Abbotsford here, game two, I was talking with some of the guys on my side on our Slack and the staff writers. It was the whole time giving just a 1-0 game feeling the goalies, Artur Shilovs on the other side, who got some NHL playoff experience last year when both goalies were hurt in Vancouver. Just incredible stuff. So many times I thought Matej Bluml or Cole Lind or Justin Ritzkovian had the game on his stick and ready to score, and Shilovs shut the door. It was incredible stuff to watch, and Remy Poirier was up to the task as well. And, as they say, he was just one save better because it was a 1-0 game.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you surprised looking at Petravic and what he's been able to do now for 2 straight years in the NHL after playing the whole year basically in the AHL?
Steady professionalism, I mean, is what Alex Petravic brings, and I'd say last year I was a little surprised, right? But then it happened again this year. Like, oh well, this is spring Alex Petravic. This is what happens. I think I personally, as a fan of Alex Petravic's game and like the way that he's comported himself in Cedar Park, I don't want to see him here again in the fall. I think he should be part of the plan in Dallas. I feel like he's earned that with the play that he had in the postseason. I looked and this is the most games he's played in any playoff in his career, AHL or NHL, because he played on some bad San Antonio teams back in the day, back when Gavin, you were covering Houston and San Antonio was no good. He's never gone that deep. He's never played that many games, and to have the impact that he had on a pairing with Bischel was excellent. And I never had any illusions that Bischel was coming back to Texas for this playoff run. He, I think, has earned his spot in Dallas, and I think part of sort of the roster management that you do there as a leadership team is you say, well, we want to send the message to this player that he is part of our long-term plans, and he obviously was involved in a lot of physical play in the playoffs and the end of the season. So let's give him that time to rest and recover and show that, hey, you're going to be in Dallas next year. You've played your last game in Cedar Park. For Petravic, I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet because he just got assigned yesterday. But I would honestly wonder, did he get the choice?
Yeah, good question.
Did they say like, hey, Alex, like, look, you did your time here and you can go home if you want. But from what I understand, talking to a couple folks, he was super involved in keeping track of what was happening in Texas. His heart is in 2 places. And I think it's really interesting the way that Dallas has built the connection to Texas, because I remember 2 years ago, I came up to talk to some folks in Dallas during the playoff run, and I talked to Thomas Harley, and he had spent most of the season in Texas, but then got called up at the end of the year and was really having a big coming out party in the playoffs there. And I asked him like, hey, have you been paying attention to what's going on in Texas? And he told me at the time, if there were any way for me to play every single night and come down to Texas and play one game and play in Dallas the next night and Texas the next night, he would do it.
Wow. Because
he had such a connection to that team and to that place. And I think Alex Petravic, it sounds like, had the exact same sort of feeling where these are his guys and his heart's in 2 places. And as much as he wanted to win a Stanley Cup, he also wants the Texas Stars to win a Calder Cup. And if he can help do that, then here he comes.
So he's had 3 days off. Do you think Petravic assumes the role as far as a top-line defenseman?
I think he's in.
Yeah.
I mean, he was planning on playing Game 6 against Edmonton and Game 1 against Florida. So I think he's ready and raring to go. And it gives him a nice nasty element, I think. The funny thing is, if anybody, Liam Bischel would have been a great addition during this particular series. The Vancouver affiliate Abbotsford plays a very physically tough game, a lot of just physicality to their game, grindiness to their game. And I think a guy like Petravic and the way he plays, in addition to being an excellent player, top pairing, he also adds an element of meanness that you saw a little bit, right, in in these series that he was playing for Dallas. That's going to be a good additional element for them to have at home here against Abbotsford this week.
So we love to incorporate listeners' questions, and Nick Sellers asked, does anyone on Texas, asking you, Stephen, meet that gritty/net front type that seems to be a need and priority this summer for Dallas?
That's an interesting one. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, our listeners are smart. They're really good.
There's a difference between a player who can play that type of role here in Texas and the kind of player who can play that type of role in Dallas. It just requires that extra level of, reaction time and the speed of the game, right? I mean, Gavin's going to laugh as I say this, but years ago, Curtis McKenzie was that guy, and
Yep.
he still is
Oh, I'm not
sometimes that
laughing. I
guy.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. But the problem is he's not a NHL prospect at
Yeah.
this point. He's an AHL guy. And happy with that role, I think, in where he is in his career. I don't know that there's a guy who's like necessarily that net front person.
Right.
Last year, I would have told you Kyle McDonald was showing promise down that track. He had a huge amount of power play goals. His stat line was actually pretty funny because it was mostly power play time, and he was kind of sitting in front of the net, and he'd just have these quick turnaround shots or redirections or things like that. But this year he had didn't have as good of a year. Then he got injured, unfortunately, with I don't know exactly where in the lower body, but he had what looked like a nothing play. It looked like a knee-on-knee hit, and he's out for the season after that. So he's not playing in these playoffs. Um, they don't have a guy, I'd say, that you could pull up necessarily in that role.
Well, what about Ritzkovian? I know he's a scrapper and he fights for everything, and we saw that for a little bit here in Dallas this past year, having a real good Calder Cup playoffs, but maybe a size question as far as can he be a net front presence. But then I think of like players like Brendan Gallagher for Montreal and others that aren't that big but somehow find their way to collect the rebounds.
Guy like Ritzkovian, what I like about him a lot is just I think he's going to be a really good adaptable player in the NHL. And for what it's worth, I'm saying that because I think it's a foregone conclusion for me that he's in the NHL next year. That's my personal thought because you look at the team control of his salary, and he's still on his entry level deal. He's going to be cheap. He can play on the penalty kill. He is responsible on the dots, good defensively. And by the way, he just won Rookie of the Year by being the highest scoring rookie in the AHL. So all of that, I thought he was going to be more of an Oscar Beck type where he, could score every once in a while, but mostly he's defensively responsible. He found his offense this year and is, I think, ready to play a third, fourth line role for Dallas next year. Whether that includes, net front on the power play or any other kind of, power play time, up to be determined by him. On terms of his play, that's what Scott White always likes to say is that it's up to the players to make us make tough decisions with their play, and so I think it's all possible for him. And if you're looking for a spark, as the guys call him, Ritzy,
Sure.
Ritzkovian is the guy who I think should be in the bottom six next year.
What the Blickens ask, can we keep Mate Blumel, or does it seem like he'll move on and to give himself a better opportunity? Very interesting because one way or another, it seems as though Mate Blumel's time for a legit NHL shot is here.
He has arrived. He is the leading goal scorer in the AHL this season. Won that award. First time a Texas Star has ever won that award, which is pretty cool. I think one way or another, like he's playing on an NHL roster next year. Being a unrestricted free agent, he can make the decision whether he thinks that's with Dallas. A lot of it depends on, I'm sure, things that your listeners are thinking about of what happens with Jamie Benn, what happens with Matt Duchene. Do those guys move on elsewhere, or do they stick around with Dallas? And what spots does that then open up? I would love it if there was a line, the fourth line next year was Justin Ritzkovian, Arttu Huru, and Mate Blumel. That would be awesome. From a Texas Stars standpoint, I'd love to go and have conversations with them and all those sorts of things. Is that what Dallas needs? Is that what Mate Blumel wants? Because Blumel could go play, let's just take the absolute lowest case, go play with a Chicago or San Jose or something like that, and probably play all 82 games and be middle six or something like that, and get maybe even get some power play time. Who knows? That's up to him. Does he feel an allegiance to Dallas, where he wants to play here, or does he want to go chase an opportunity elsewhere? And it's I'm not saying that in a negative way of chase. It's his time to go be in the NHL, so he needs to go make that move.
The Harry Wagstaff with a fascinating question. Pete DeBoer with 1 year left on his deal. If DeBoer has a slow start to the season, or locker room issues, do you see Neil Graham as a possible midseason replacement? And that is kind of fascinating. A little bit of a different style, I imagine. But Neil Graham has had success, and one of the things that the Stars do a great job of is from top to bottom, like over communicating. So, they really are like as one moving forward.
Well, I mean, this is my one of my favorite soapboxes. I hope personally, just because of the relationship that I built with Neil over the years and the fact that he's been in the system, I hope that he is an NHL coach with the Dallas Stars, just because I think that's a really cool advancement opportunity. I think he's going to be an NHL head coach one day, and I do hope it's with Dallas. Um, I thought honestly that maybe the timing would work out such that DeBoer's contract ended and Neil Graham's time would start, or something like that. It's one of those situations where um, he's gonna get an opportunity somewhere. You want to try and lock him in where it's going to be in Dallas, and so does that mean like you move him into an associate role or an assistant role or something like that? Because you don't want him to leave the system if you can avoid it, right? And to his credit, he's gotten his team to the conference finals, and so there's more eyes on him and his coaching. Let's say he wins this series and the team goes to the Calder Cup finals, even more eyes on him. And the only time Texas won the Calder Cup finals, the head coach Willie Desjardins wasn't at the celebration because he was busy on a flight
Yeah,
to Vancouver, where he was hired as the head coach like 2 days later. So it really raises the profile and puts an opportunity, for him similar to Matej Bluml, right?
sure.
Where like this is your NHL opportunity.
Yeah.
I think that the team, the organization really trusts Neil and likes him. They've had him around since when he started in Idaho. I think it was 2016 or so, at least. Thinking back all the way for a while now, he's been around, and I think that I would like it to be true. I don't know if it happens, but I think that he's like number one on the list if there's something that needs to be a change that needs to be made.
Well, that is interesting that you mentioned Desjardins, because another coach that's about to play or coach in the Stanley Cup is Glenn Gullson, former Texas Stars head coach.
Exactly, and it's kind of funny. I do appreciate one of the things that is nice. I always feel like is great about hockey, and this is kind of a behind the scenes thing for listeners. Sean and I talk about this sometimes. It's really cool how, at least in hockey, and Gavin, you could speak to other sports, and if this is true, but it seems like hockey players and hockey coaches don't forget people who they saw coming up, and it's really neat to like run into Glenn Gulletson, however many years later it's been since he worked for Dallas and worked for Texas, and he recognizes me and says hi. And I was just a guy,
That's
just a
cool.
guy asking him questions in the tunnel at the Cedar Park Center 15 years ago. And he's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" That sort of thing is really neat. I'm a Glenn Gulletson fan. I don't think he was ready for the Dallas job when he had it many years ago. But I know that's something that some folks have kind of poked at, like, could he make a return and come back to Dallas potentially? Is that an option? Especially if he goes and wins the Stanley Cup or something like that as an assistant with Edmonton. Interesting option.
Well, and that kind of leads me to, I think, more of an opinion answer from you, because I don't know if there's a right or wrong. But to get an NHL coaching job, is it preferred that you're an NHL assistant coach or an AHL head coach?
There's different skills involved, I would say. And we've seen it leading back on Desjardins, like Willie Desjardins. He had a associate coach, I believe, was technically his title with Dallas, and then they sent him down to be AHL head coach because he had not been a professional head coach at that point in his career. It's almost like a career development opportunity for him. They knew that they had some big prospects coming up who they wanted to grow and nurture, and he went to take the head coaching role for 2 years, won a Calder Cup, unfortunately left the organization to go elsewhere. But I think being the head guy has different challenges to it. Managing a bench from the head perspective is something that you want to have some experience with. So if a guy went from being an AHL head coach to being an NHL assistant to then being an NHL head coach, I think that would be a path. But if you've never been a professional head coach, I think heading back to an AHL head role could be preferred. Because like Desjardins at that point had been head coach of Medicine Hat, which by the way, he is head coach at Medicine Hat last night and now, and unfortunately last night they lost in the Memorial Cup to the London Knights. But he won a championship with them in the WHL. That head coaching time, though, in the professional ranks helped him to score that position with Vancouver.
So a guy, it takes a village as far as like, I think what was really cool during this Dallas playoff run was people saw how valuable a guy like Sam Steele was to the Dallas Stars, and you got to see some offensive ability. And one of the leading scorers for Texas in these Calder Cups is a guy that, hasn't really sniffed the NHL. In fact, played just 2 games in the NHL, and that's Cameron Hughes. Just a fascinating story. He was with the Bruins organization coming out of college, the University of Wisconsin. Had a big year in 23-24 with coach of Coachella Valley, and equaled it this year, a career high with Texas Stars. It's been a nice story. I mean, he's 28, so he's not necessarily that high prospect, obviously, but guys like that can make a nice career in the AHL.
They absolutely can, and I'm a fan of Cameron Hughes, even though he's got some. Let's see, if we're gonna do the poll for Dallas Stars fans, he's got some Steve Ott qualities to him. Very guy you like to have on your team, not a guy you like to play against. And I think, Cameron Hughes, if he wasn't already firmly embedded in the hearts of Texas Stars fans, what he did in Game 3 against Grand Rapids, as I mentioned, Texas was down. They had allowed 4 goals. It was 4-1. They come into the third period down 4-1. You're already thinking, all right, we're going to be here for Game 4. How's this going to go? What am I going to do on Wednesday night or whatever it was the next game was going to be? And early on in the period, he has a fight. And it's a packed building, full sellout. And going off to the penalty box, he does the raise. He raises his arms to get everybody screaming, and the whole building is just cheers, right? And it's like the energy changed in the building, right? And all of a sudden they start chipping away. They score a goal. Hughes scores a power play goal, and then all of a sudden it's 4-4. And they go to double overtime, and guess who scores the game-winning goal in double overtime to eliminate the Griffins?
Wow.
It's Cameron Hughes. So he had two goals, an assist, and a fight. And he started the comeback. And it's one of those things where, like, let's say they had gone on to lose like 6-2 or something like that. That move right there to like get the crowd into it would have been remembered completely differently. But he drove the bus to get that thing going. And he had such great success the past 2 years with Coachella Valley, Cole Lind as well. They came over. Those two, by the way, have made the past 3 Western Conference Finals in the AHL with 2 different teams.
That's amazing.
Which is quite an accomplishment to say the least. And that's that game right there. A game like that is why you sign a guy like Cameron Hughes, because he's got the veteran quality and the ability to jump in and put a team on his back a little bit in a moment. Like he's not going to drive the whole thing. Not a Jamie Benn in 2010 for the Texas Stars and be all everything for them. But he can jump in big critical moments and deliver a big goal or have a critical assist or whatever it might be to get you to that next level. I've been really impressed with his play, and he's a fun guy to interview. Doesn't take himself too seriously as well, which is nice. You always like those guys who kind of know their role and know that hockey's a game, and it's good to have fun out there.
For Spits and Suds Stars fans listening, if I were to name a top 3 as far as prospects in Texas right now, Ritzkovian, Bluml, who would fill in that 3rd slot for you?
It's a great question.
R2, maybe? Huru?
R2 Huru is a good one, for sure. If like I said, if you made that your 4th line in Dallas next year, that's not a bad thing. I think one of the things that's interesting there is the fact that you didn't call out any defensemen.
I was going to ask you, that was my next question regarding defensemen, because I mean, obviously there's Petravic and Bischel was down there, and prior to that, Harley. So, I mean, they certainly have produced defensemen that can play in Dallas, but seems as though we're kind of waiting now.
we're in a little bit of a waiting state. I think I really like Luke Chris coming out of college. I think he's had an okay year. The one that I would say, if you want to be cool and know what's coming next, which I know your listeners certainly do want to know what's coming
Yes.
next, Trey Taylor is a guy that I would put a star next to as you watch. He signed for Dallas on an ELC. He is playing on an amateur tryout with Texas this spring, so he actually already played a full regular season, right, with a completely different team in college, and then was signed as an ATO. And that means he can play the rest of the season, regular season, and then he can play in the playoffs. And pretty quickly after joining the team, he was on PP2. So he was quarterback of the second power play, and has had some really nice games. As I look at this, as I think these stats here, there was one where he had I believe he had an assist on like every goal in one of the games last round, I believe. He's had some really nice games, showed some really good offensive spark. But the thing with defensemen is like it's not like he's going to show up next year and be ready to play for the Dallas Stars. It takes a little bit of time for him to mature. He is older though, coming out of college, so there is that. But I think that if you had to pick a guy. He's the guy that I'm most interested in the defensive side. The forwards that you mentioned are probably the right forwards. To be honest, I think Stranges was showing well throughout the year. He kind of dropped off a little bit, and then unfortunately got injured. He had a shoulder injury, and just came back in the last round. He did score a goal in game one against Abbotsford, and his first goal he'd scored since early March, just because of the injury. And you could see the weight lifted off his back. I believe he also figuratively lifted a monkey off his back as part of his celebration. So he was certainly aware of the significance of the goal and was feeling it in that particular game.
So yeah, Taylor and Martino come from Clarkston, and that's good that we're seeing Taylor. Any news out of Martino? Played in
Martino
four
played a
games, yeah, during the
He
regular
played a
season.
couple of games.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he'll be a big part of next year's roster. I don't think anybody who's added at this particular point, Texas pretty much has their guys. And if you go to my website and you look at the game reports, you've got a list of names about a dozen or 13 long, who are scratched in every game, and it's just you got black aces everywhere. And I mean, believe me, Texas and Dallas Stars fans alike would love to see Hemming, right? Emil Hemming is
Sure.
here doing Black Ace things.
Okay.
You've got Tristan Bertucci, who's going to be a big part of the plan next year. He's also, if you were to make a list, he's not currently playing for Texas. He probably is above Taylor on your list of like prospects, but he hasn't played but one game so far in his professional career. So again, still one of those who's developing. But they're part of the optional skate, the Black Ace crew. They're not going to be inserted unless you got to break glass in case of emergency. Generally, Texas has their guys that they like, and there's a couple of different rotations. They're taking Matthew Seminoff in and out. Chase Wheatcroft is rotating in and out. Gavin White got in instead of Tommy Bergslund in the last game on defense. But overall, they've pretty much got their crew that they like.
Yeah, I mean, anytime a Gavin gets into the Texas Stars line, we had Gavin Bayreuther, Gavin White, Gavin Spittle. I mean, we're
Get
racking up
get
the
double
Gavins.
Gavins last year. It
I
was a
know.
big year for
I
Gavins on the
know. I
Texas
know. I
Stars.
know. That's why I'm such a Texas Stars fan. Absolutely. Okay. Speaking of guys that I really have my eye on, and this is a Gavin Spittle, like I keep bringing him up to people. So the Stars sign, and is he on your list, Steven? Arno Tiefensee, the German goaltender, 22 years old, watched a lot of his tape, really, really like him. Obviously a long way to go, but it seems as though there's kind of a goaltender logjam.
I like I really wanted him to come over just because like we so rarely see guys come over from Europe
Yes.
on ATOs. It's just not common because you got to come over across the sea and there's obviously like logistic things we don't think about with like visas and all that kind of stuff that you got to deal with to come over. But also like they just played a full on regular season. He's probably not going to play any games here
Right.
anyways. Like
Yep.
they've got 3 goalies, 4 goalies, 5 goalies actually. Gosh, as I'm thinking about it, because they've not only got Poirier and Hellberg, they've also now got Cros.
Yep.
They have Brian Thompson, who played the year in Idaho, and then they have another guy they signed, Logan Turnus, out of Ohio State University as well. They have 5 goalies. Like he's not going to play, right? So give him the summer, let him rest. We'll probably see him here next year, right? And that's the other thing too is we might see him here next year because reports are that Magnus Hellberg has already signed a deal to head back to Europe. He'll play in Sweden next year, according to reports. So it looks like it may be Remy Poirier and I don't know, maybe Tiefensee. I don't know. It depends, and a lot of this is training camp battles and those sorts of
Sure.
things. Ben Cross will be part of the conversation as well, but he's not on the list, unfortunately, of Black Aces. At this point, you could almost form like a 4-on-4 team out of the list of the Black
Yeah,
Aces.
you could.
Yeah, it's only gonna get crazier now with Petravic down. You'll have one defenseman who drops out
Sure.
tonight, so you'll have another one in there who could add to the extra
Great
squad.
experience, though.
Absolutely, they know what it takes to win, and I'm going to write something about this here at some point later this week. But there was a story from one of the big national outlets about how the Iowa Wild really don't care about winning in the AHL. That's not why they're there. They're not there to win. They're there to develop prospects. And given that we wrote the book where the title is "We Win Here" and "We Win Here" is the slogan that the Texas Stars have in their locker room, I don't understand that. It makes absolutely no sense to me. You learn to win at every level, and it's not minor league baseball. It's not that. You need to learn to win in the AHL level, and Texas has had so much success. If they are successful in getting out of this round, it will be their fourth time going to the Calder Cup in 16 years.
Hmm.
So 1 out of 4
Yeah. Good.
they go all the way,
Yeah.
right? Like that's incredible experience. And you essentially, I talked to Scott White at one point, who's the GM of the Texas Stars, and he said that they essentially view that a postseason that's that long as being worth like half a season's worth of development, even though it's only 20 games. It's basically every game is worth two in terms of how much you learn in every game and the adjustments you have to make and the level of just the level of pressure that you have on you to execute on every single shift. Why wouldn't you want that for
Yeah.
your prospects? I think it's just a completely backwards take on how you're supposed to develop your minor league prospects.
You know you have good chemistry and a great guest when he leads you into another question for the second time that you were about to ask. The name of the book is We Win Here, and it's a terrific book. And why you should support this book is because Steven and Sean Shapiro have been so good to Spits and Suds. So I love supporting them in their efforts, and I love supporting 100 Degree Hockey. And Steven, just take us through, because Father's Day is right around the corner. I think it's a really nice, reasonable gift to give to Dad. And it talks about the history of the Texas Stars with some great Dallas Stars tie-ins. Curtis McKenzie wrote the foreword, which I think is wonderful. He actually put effort into it and sat down and wrote it. And I think that's wonderful. But also the fact that just the history between the clubs, and a lot of the players that you'll be reading about in the book are currently with Dallas.
Absolutely. I think, I have I keep changing which one is my favorite necessarily. That I love my favorite essay. It's a series of essays. So the other nice thing is, you can read one. You go read it on the beach or something. If you're on vacation, you go read one and then you go jump in the water. And they're 10 or 12 pages each, not that long. I think especially given what's going on right now with Dallas Stars and the future of Jamie Benn. Right now, the very first essay where I talk about the first year covering the team and the playoff run where Jamie Benn came down and played, I think 26 games it was with the Texas Stars and really put the team on his back and took him all the way to Game 6 of the Calder Cup final as a rookie in the league. I'm thinking a lot about that right now and the journey that he's been on as a professional hockey player. And that was at the same time my first year covering the team, covering any team, and the things that I didn't know, the things that I learned over that year, and the things that I've learned since then. And then the other one that's really relevant in that same vein is the one about the game where I got to watch Ben Bishop's last professional hockey game. And then conduct his last professional post-game interview, just in the green room at the Cedar Park Center. Just a couple of us standing there asking him questions, and then 36 hours later, he retired. Um, Hockey players aren't like the rest of us. We don't get they don't get to say always when their careers are over. And there's someone right now, as the line from the essay, there's someone right now in the Texas Stars locker room who is playing their last professional season and they don't know it yet.
Mm,
And it's
yeah,
just something to think about.
sure.
Um, the contract won't come or the deal won't work or maybe they get injured and they never come back. Whatever it is, they've already played their last professional game. Um, or they're about to sometime this week or next week or whenever the season is over for the Texas Stars. Um, that's something to think about, and it makes you think about the ephemeral nature of professional sports and how what a privilege it is for them to be able to play every day for as long as they can. So, they're not all quite as philosophical as that. There's some that are just plain silly and fun, and there's also some off the record stories that we waited until the statute of limitations wore off to tell. So enjoy it. Hopefully, you guys get a chance to do it. You can go to wewinhere.com to get the
Okay.
book, by the way.
Okay. And finally, Stephen, I'm so fascinated because a lot of times you do come back up to Dallas, and so you do the road trip and cover a lot of the guys. No one in particular. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but do you see a personality change as far as what you cover in Cedar Park compared to what you cover in Dallas?
Personality change. I think a lot of these guys, I have a bias because I love hockey, and hockey I think it just has some really interesting, great characters involved in it. I I just think about the fact that the connections that you make, and Sean and I harp on this all the time, and we're talking about how important it is to cover all levels of a sport if you truly
Yep,
love it
I
and
agree.
understand all the levels. The connections that you make at any level, people remember. I may have told the story before, but for some of your new listeners, I think it's really interesting. One time, I was down in the bowels of the American Airlines Center, and I walked up to Willie Desjardins, who was at that time coaching the Vancouver Canucks, and I said hello, and just how's it going? And I hope everything's going well. You're in your new role, and he introduced me to Stu Barnes walked up, who Dallas Stars, longtime Dallas
Yeah,
Star, and overall just a guy that everyone knows. He introduced me to Stu Barnes, like, first of all, like Willie and I were old friends, and also like I wouldn't know who Stu Barnes was, and also he introduced me like I was the most important person in the world,
that's
and just
great.
like that level of connection and just like personality and interpersonal understanding. I think it's so important, and just like that level of treating everybody with a level of care and personal connection. It's so important, and just the fact that one of my staff writers came up and talked to Alex Petravic in the first round against Colorado, and there was a media scrum around him and whatever, and Alex gave them the stock answers that you give, and then my guy Nicholas Kingman walked up to him and said, hey, can I talk to you? And he talked to him for 10 minutes, and he gave him, you know, different, better answers because we had a personal connection from Cedar Park. It's nothing against the national guys, but they fly in, they say their
Sure.
thing, and you give the stock answers. And if you know someone a little bit deeper, you get a little bit better answers. And so building that personal connection, I'd recommend the fans, the folks who are listening, come down to Cedar Park, come check out these games, know before anyone else who's coming, and get to say, yeah, I
Right.
got to see Jake Ottinger's first professional start. I got to see, Tristan Bertucci score his first professional goal. And then, 5 years from now, when he's a mainstay on the Blue in Dallas, you can get to rub it in all the faces of all the people who sit around you. There's a level of connection and depth of understanding when you go just that next click deeper. And as always, Gavin, appreciate you supporting that next level of connection by having folks on here from all over the hockey universe.
Well, of course. I mean, when we had Justin Ritzkovian on, we came up with the idea for Robert Tiffin came up with the name for a podcast, Ritzy and Spitzy.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
You got a great name right there for hockey. So Spitz it's right there.
Yeah.
We got to do it.
Yeah. And I made up for that because I did talk to him about, since he's from Quebec, obviously his, love of the Quebec Nordiques, totally forgetting that for some reason, mind blank, the Montreal Canadiens are right there. And he's like, no, so he said, I didn't like the Nordiques. I don't even think he was alive when the Nordiques were.
I don't think he was.
Now that I think about it, but no, he grew up a big Canadiens fan, and but all the French I knew I put on the table, and then we became besties. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? He had to go to school in Boston.
Northeastern.
So that must have been tough for him. So Bruins and Canadiens are certainly not friends. So it must have been tough for him to have his closest games be at TD Garden there in Boston Bruins territory.
That's true. In fact, his brother had a pretty good year. I think his brother's going to get drafted too.
It'd be a lot of fun. It's really neat, these brother connections as well, in across all the AHL, and to see some of these guys who, probably were playing stick hockey on their knees and when they were 4 years old, playing in the pros together.
Absolutely. All right. Follow at 100 Degree Hockey now, because Steven will be giving updates throughout the night. It will be a rockin' barn. Super excited. Game 3, Texas, Abbotsford. The name of the book is called We Win Here. You can go to wewinhere.com to buy it for Father's Day. Dad will absolutely love it. The website, 100degreehockey.com. This has been absolutely awesome, Steven. Thank you so much. Off-season program number 2, but not off-season for our Texas Stars. And thank you so much for giving us an update on the prospects. It really we're playing off-season GM here, so you did a great job as far as painting our fourth line and projection picture. So thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely. And if anybody makes it to game 3, 4, or hopefully 5, give me a shout. I'd love to come say hi.
Okay, how do they do that? Do they just reach out at 100 Degree Hockey?
Yeah, just shoot me a DM on 100 Degree Hockey. DMs are open. You guys can come say hi. I'll make the trip to wherever you're sitting in the arena and come shake your hand.
Awesome. He is amazing. The greatness of Steven Meserve. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. Thank you so much. And spread the word, please. That's all we ask, that there are off-season programs happening on Spits and Suds. The Stars and NHL talks continue right here on Spits and Suds until our next episode, which will be real soon. Have a great day, everyone.